Hi everyone, welcome to my channel, The Life of Nina. I was sitting and thinking today about summer's almost done, and it seems like the summers go faster and faster and end up not getting half of what we wanted to get done. It's not done yet. So from thinking on all of that, I started thinking about when I was young and the things that I loved to do in the summertime. One of the nicest summers that I can remember, I went to Kentucky with my mom's mom and dad. And I stayed, let's see, probably seems like several weeks with them. And I can remember walking down, they called them the holler, and I'd be walking down the road and the road was all dirt. And of course be barefooted, and it seems like when I just close my eyes, I can almost feel that dirt beneath my feet, because it was like when you walked, puffs of dirt would kind of puff up. It wasn't like the dirt was so rock hard and rocky that it would hurt your feet. No, this dirt, it was like when you walked, it must have had like maybe some sand in it or something, because when you walked, it was, the softness was there. And like I said, each step you could just feel the dirt puff up and actually see it puff up around your feet. And when you ran, it really did. You could leave a dust trail behind you and you wouldn't even have to be running that fast. And I remember that, walking down that lane and or holler, and the trees on both sides of the road would just kind of come up over top of you, and it just felt like you and the world and nobody else. I remember just loving that, just looking around. I've always been a woman that, even as a young girl, I've always loved trees, and something about them, it just feels like there's, when you're looking up at them, it's almost like you can connect. And that was one of the fun things I remember. And then I had a cousin that came down, and he ended up staying a few days, and I had never ventured out by myself as far as, walking down the railroad tracks, because you would walk for quite a long ways and you would come to a little town, and in that town there was a post office. And in the post office, I wish I had a camera back then, because inside that post office was just like you would see back in, the early 1900s. They would be wanted posters on the wall, and it was just so old and had never been painted and fixed up. It was just old and rustic and looked really cool to me. But they carried penny candy, and a lot of kids from that neighborhood and stuff would walk along the tracks or however else they got there and would purchase penny candy. Well, when my cousin got there, him and I are the same age, and he wanted, Grandpa and Poppy had told him that if we walked down the tracks, and I don't remember how far it was, but even as a young girl, like probably, I'm gonna say 14, maybe 15, it was a very long walk. And when we walked there, you would come to, like, I think there were 3 sections that the bridge went over top of creeks. And so you could see down through the railroad tracks. And, the railroad tracks, you could see down through the railroad tracks, and the tracks made up the bridge. Of course, no cars or nothing, only trains went over them, and I believe there was, like I said, 3 sets of those. So at first it kind of scared me to walk, because, railroad tracks are not that really close together, and I could see down through and see that running water, and it scared me. I was afraid that I would end up falling down through those, and of course I never did, but it was a fear of mine. And I overcame that by doing that so many times those few days that he was there. By walking back and forth on those tracks, I got to be where I thought it was really cool, and I really liked it. But we would walk there and get penny candy and walk back, and we just had a really good time. It was so fun, just, throwing rocks, and just, even though I was older, it was fun to have someone to hang out with and someone to talk to. We talked a lot. And then my great grandfather's house was way up on a hill, so we had to either walk up the road around to his house, or you could walk up the great big hill in front of his house. So that's usually what us kids, if anybody ever visited him, that's usually what we did. We would just hike up the big hill, and we actually had wore a path that summer going back and forth up and down that hill. And then there was a river that actually was, if you walk down Poppy's hillside and cross the road and then cross the track, and right past the track was a river. And the river had tons and tons of trees on both sides of it. And someone had fixed a rope on one of them, and you could swing on that rope and go way out in that river and, jump. Now, I was a chicken. I was afraid to do that for the longest time. And I think probably because I never could swim. I was not ever a really good, strong swimmer. I could do dog pedal, I could float and do that type of thing, but as far as, regular swimming, I wasn't very strong at it. So we would go down there, all of us, when all the cousins would come, we would all go down there and swim. And then the hillside going down to the river, my uncles had dug out stair steps, so in the mud and dirt. And then the only thing is when those things got wet from us getting in and out, but it was just like a mudslide. You could just start at the top and slide all the way right down to the river. Now that was fun. That was a good time. There was a neighbor down there that had a swinging bridge that went over top of that river, and I was only on that once, and that was the time that their dog chased me off of it and scared me and my cousin Kathy to death. Luckily we didn't get bit or anything, but yeah, that was the only time I was ever on that swinging bridge, and that was scary enough. I never wanted to do that again. So yeah, we had some great times down at my great-grandfather's house, and he had, I think there was 2 bedrooms upstairs, and then he had changed the dining room into, put beds in there, so there were 2 big beds in the dining room, and a little, I'm not even sure what it started out being, but it was just a little room. He put a bed in there, so there was room for quite a few of our relatives to sleep. And so we had family reunions down there whenever we could. And I think the last one that I had ever went to I was 16, I believe, and I felt like I had grown up over in that last year or two. No longer was pulling my hair back in a ponytail. I was letting it hang down and, trying to be more girly. And all my life I had always been a tomboy. So I guess that was the year that I actually just matured and enjoyed just sitting on the porch swing and talking with everyone. And I remember that they had, Poppy's house is tore down now, but there was a sliding window, and it was led from the kitchen, and you could open it up and pass food out to the big front porch. So that's what they would do. My mom and aunts would be cooking in there, and they would pass out food. We would set it all on a big table on the front porch, and we would all eat outside. And it was so nice because, like I said, sitting up on top of that mountain, where his house was, you always had a breeze. And actually, us kids slept out on that porch. We drug out mattresses and things, and or big quilts, and we slept out on the front porch. And I don't remember ever worrying about getting eat up by bugs or anything. Poppy had a gate on that porch so that, no animals would just walk up, and of course they could have climbed up like coons and all that, but we were never bothered with anything. We had really good times. He also had before he got running water, all he had was a pump, and the pump was right out by the kitchen door. So us kids, oh my goodness, I remember our moms getting out there and scrubbing our hair and pumping that ice cold water, and it would about freeze your brain. But boy, would your hair be shiny and squeaky clean. Just wonderful time. He had an old outhouse, and yeah, that's the only thing you had to use. So if you had to go, you had to use it. And I was one that I never liked having those outhouses. We had one when I was a little girl growing up, and I would run over to my grandma's house to go to the bathroom, and I ended up getting myself in all kinds of trouble by not going to the restroom when I should have. But that's another story for another day. So down at Poppy's, the outhouse was, a piece from the house. So you walked up on the little hill, and you could actually leave the door open because it wasn't facing nothing but, the trees. So that's what Mom always did. Mom said that she liked to go out there, just get away from everybody and just sit and look out the door and relax and not even have to go to the restroom. Just sit there and look out at the beautiful, trees and hills. So there was also, if you walked up another hill, there was a family graveyard. It's still there, of course, and they had one big area, and then if you kept walking up the lane, which it wasn't very often that anybody went up to the second one, which was actually the very first graveyard, because the road had long since been way overgrown and moss was all over everything, and most of the headstones you couldn't even make out anymore. But my mom told me when she was a little girl that they would go up to that one and sit and play most of the day because it was so cool underneath those trees, and the green moss would feel like velvet carpet to, the kids. And so they would end up using that as the carpet and playing house up there, take an old broom with them and dust all the leaves off of it. And Mom said they had a good time, so that's what us kids did when we were younger. We would walk up there and do the same thing. Well, now that I'm older, I think, oh my goodness, we never even looked for snakes. And there's poisonous snakes down there in Kentucky that we don't have here in Ohio. And my goodness, if, I'd been scared to death to let my kids go up there and play all day, without someone checking things out for them. We'd walk up barefooted or in flip-flops. And the grass would be all growed up, and never ever thought about it. So I'm glad that God took care of us. But the closest to the road, that graveyard, excuse me, that's where most of the family were buried at. And my grandma and grandpa ended up they had 9 children, but 2 of them were born when they lived down there in Kentucky, and they both passed away. So their little graves are up in the family graveyard, and of course now that's where my great-grandpa and grandma are buried at. And my grandma and grandpa, the ones that lost the 2 babies, they are buried up in Ohio, up north from where we are, about an hour and a half away. So I don't get up there very often to visit their graves, but I really think back on all of the things that I tried. I tried to make things slow down even when I was young. I tried to always think of things like the puff of the dirt when I ran, down the road, and the feeling of that cold, cold water when Mom and my aunts would wash our hair, with the old pump. And it seemed like the food tasted so much better eating it outside on that front porch. I tried to, ingrain those in my memory so that I wouldn't forget, because they were such wonderful, wonderful times that I never want to forget those. And so I try yet to this day to make memories that I'm going to remember, and I hope that I'll be able to share so my grandchildren, when they are grown adults, they can look back and say, wow, Grammy, did this and Grammy did that. Yeah, memories are so precious. And let's see what time we're at now. Okay, so it's about ready to close for that, but those are the summers that I spent in Kentucky, down in the Appalachian Mountains with my grandparents and my great-grandfather. He was the one, he outlived his wife. My great-grandmother had a stroke and several strokes and ended up passing away. So it was a great childhood, and I just want to thank you guys for going along with me and listening to my little bit of my history, I guess, and my life. So hope you're having a great day, and I hope that I will inspire some of you guys to tell maybe a little bit about your youth and some of the things that you did that touched your life in a way that you never want to forget them. So God bless you guys. Talk to you later.